Hello and welcome back to the Transform Awards Europe, where I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Malloy, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Brand Potential. Now, there's one particular project I wanted to focus on talking with Chris, and that's for Microhive. Perhaps you could tell me a little bit about this company. I mean, they're so interesting and what they do.
Of course. So Microhive are a social enterprise that are on a mission to revolutionise micro-giving and giving everybody access to the ability to be able to contribute to charity. What they do is they collect the pennies in people's pay slips. So the maximum you can contribute is 99 pence, but on average it's going to be 50 pence. And what they do is they organise a scheme so the company, so your company could sign up. The individuals within the company, the employees, can choose to take part. And Microhive, what is now Microhive after we rebranded them, collects the pennies and the collective impact has a very significant impact. So if you're a larger organisation, those pennies add up to potentially millions across the year.
That's absolutely fantastic. But why did they come to you guys for help? Why did they need a rebrand? What was it about their previous identity that was failing to meet the mark?
Pennies from Heaven was the name that was developed by the original founder about 20 years ago. And it had got to a point where the new leaders of the business and Kate Frost, the CEO, recognised that it was holding them back. It had certain negative connotations. It was associated with end-of-life care, for example. It had religious connotations. And whilst that was okay for some people, it wasn't necessarily cutting through and engaging with the wider audience that they're looking to engage with. And also, it was proving to be a barrier to them developing new opportunities, new propositions beyond their core service that they offer at the moment. So they recognised that they needed to develop a brand that was fit for their next phase of development and growth in terms of growing their core, stretching into new areas. So they needed a brand positioning and they needed a new identity. And they faced into needing a new name as well, which obviously you change your name at your peril. So that was something that the business and the CEO were understandably quite nervous about. But we took them on a journey to get to a point where everybody signed up to it, everybody was happy with it, and obviously it's having the impact that it is having since the launch.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. And tell me a little bit about the strategy behind the name Microhive. And you sort of delved into, what it hopes to achieve, but how far can it just sort of take this organisation?
The name Microhive, obviously the micro represents micro-giving, and they're on a mission to revolutionise micro-giving within the charity space. And Hive represents community and the power of the collective coming together, donating pennies from their payslip, but adding up to something very significant. So the Hive represents the power of the community.
So obviously it was a very extensive project. It wasn't just coming up with a new name, although that was a massive part of the project. But you also came up with a visual identity. Could you tell me a little bit about that and how it sort of backs up that new name, that new strategy for Microhive?
Yeah, of course. So the previous identity was somewhat tired. It was dated. It was probably reflective of many smaller charity-based social enterprises, and it clearly needed a refresh, and obviously needed to represent the positioning and the journey that we were on. So the core identity that we see from Microhive today represents 4 pillars of their business that are really meaningful and important to them, which is change, continuity, charity, and the power of the collective, the 4 C's that represent that. So what we see as the core asset is an identity that represents each of those 4 C's coming together into the core visual asset that you see today.
Fantastic. And we were talking a little bit off camera about some of the excellent results that have been seen as a result of the project, a result of the work that you guys have been doing. Could you tell me a bit about that and how well it's done post-launch?
So we went live, when the business went live with this, Microhive relaunched in June last year, and within 6 months they'd seen an increase in the number of organisations coming to them, an increase in the participation of individuals within organisations, which is a key metric for them. So if your business signed up, what percentage of the employees were contributing monthly? And that's a really key metric and a measure of success. The new brand has increased the level of individual participation. It's opened up new opportunities for them. It's enabled them to begin conversations about how they stretch into new propositions, new sectors, even internationally. And there's just more inbound opportunity. For example, there's an increase in website traffic for them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time, Chris. I look forward to seeing how Brand Potential get on tonight at the Transform Awards Europe.